I was just 5 years old, enjoying a Father's Day picnic. The air clean, the redwoods magnificent. My brother wanted to show me something by the stream, a place our father explicitly told us to avoid entering. What started as a simple game soon turned into a desperate struggle for air held beneath the surface. That day, something shifted, and I found myself observing my own body, lifeless in the water, a perspective I never knew was possible. How could a moment meant for family fun become the threshold of an experience that would redefine everything I thought I knew about life and death? Even as a small child, my life felt like a constant struggle, marked by confusing beatings and a pervasive sense of not being truly wanted. It was a world where pain was a frequent visitor, and my own attempts at escape were often met with further bewildering consequences. Before that pivotal Father's Day in 1954, my world was a strange blend of ordinary childhood moments and a pervasive undercurrent of unease. I was a 5.5-year-old boy living in a home that, from the outside, might have seemed typical for the era. My days were filled with the simple routines of a young child, though they were often punctuated by events that left me bewildered and searching for answers I rarely found. I had an acute sense of hearing, a perfect pitch, as my parents called it, and a rather active imagination, which often served as my sanctuary. My character, even then, was one of quiet observation. I spent a lot of time within my own thoughts, a necessity born from an environment where I often felt misunderstood. While other children might have been absorbed in games with neighborhood friends, my reality was different. My older brother, for reasons I couldn't comprehend at the time, seemed to have a propensity to cause me harm in several ways. These weren't just typical sibling squabbles. They were often deliberate acts that left physical and emotional scars. I remember one incident, a fall down the stairs, where a broken soda bottle became lodged in my leg. The story told was that I'd simply lost my balance, adding clumsy to the list of labels I seemed to acquire. These events, and my father's frequent, seemingly unprovoked belt beatings, often without apparent reason, created a sense of constant vigilance within me. I learned, early on, a coping mechanism. I could leave my body for periods of time and return shortly afterward. This wasn't a conscious decision at first, but a nascent ability that allowed me to disassociate from the pain, to diminish the suffering as I moved further out from my physical form. These were my astral journeys, as I later came to understand them, and they always ended with me back in my room, sobbing and seeking answers. Despite the emotional turmoil, there were fleeting moments of a different kind. I recall the joy of discovering things in nature, the fascination with how things worked. Later, this would evolve into a genuine interest in chemistry, even venturing into making gunpowder from library books and acquiring industrial chemicals from a warehouse. These solitary pursuits were my way of entertaining myself, a response to a childhood where I often felt isolated. My older brother's constant taunts, calling me useless and dumb, ensured I had few friends and was rarely invited to play. So I poured my energy into exploration and an internal quest for a higher level of understanding. My emotional landscape was rarely one of unadulterated happiness. There was a pervasive undercurrent of hidden disappointment, a yearning for something I couldn't articulate. I often felt like an outsider, navigating a world that seemed to operate on rules I didn't fully grasp. The beatings from my father were a source of profound confusion, especially when they were the result of my brother's actions. This created a deep-seated distrust, a sense of being constantly on guard. Regarding life and death, before the NDE, my beliefs were a mix of nascent spiritual awareness and a childhood acceptance of what I was told, albeit with a healthy dose of skepticism. My parents were hardcore Southern Baptist, with a hell, fire, and brimstone approach to Christianity that never quite resonated with me.
While I had accepted the presence of Jesus at an early age, I rejected their specific interpretations and the stories from the churches we attended. There was also the constant narrative from my mother that I was the soul of the girl baby she had lost, and that my being born a boy was a violation of my spiritual contract, a source of significant turmoil within the family. This belief, repeated to me countless times, added another layer of internal conflict and a sense that my very existence was a disappointment to her. I was not oblivious to the concept of death. It was a distant, theoretical concept, often discussed in religious terms, but without the visceral understanding that was soon to come. My youthful self harbored no strong convictions about what lay beyond, only a vague, inherited framework that felt incomplete and often contradictory.
In the dappled sunlight beneath the towering redwoods, a moment of simple curiosity quickly morphed into a terrifying struggle. The water, initially inviting, became a suffocating embrace, pulling me under despite my desperate gasps for air. A child's game in a forbidden stream transformed into a silent fight for survival. It was Sunday, June 20th, 1954, Father's Day. The air was crisp and sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth, a perfect contrast to the usual tension that seemed to cling to our household. My parents were in good spirits, setting up a picnic beneath the majestic redwood trees. I remember the relief, a genuine lightness in my small body as we were finally allowed to step out of the stifling car. Up until that point, waiting inside while my father meticulously unloaded everything felt like an eternity. The sky above was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and the sheer scale of the redwoods around us was breathtaking, filling me with a sense of wonder that momentarily eclipsed my usual anxieties. As my parents busied themselves with preparing lunch, laying out blankets and baskets, my older brother noticed a stream nearby. He was always restless, always looking for something new to explore. I, on the other hand, was content to stay close to my parents, enjoying the rare moment of calm and the sheer beauty of our surroundings. The stream, though, quickly captured his attention, and he wandered off to investigate. After a little while, he returned, his eyes bright with a discovery he was eager to share. He told me he'd found a small stream, hinting at fish or maybe even a singing frog nearby, trying to pique my curiosity. My father, who had overheard, called out to us. He said it was okay to go look at the water, even suggesting it might be a good spot for a swim later, but he issued a clear, firm warning: do not go into the water. We were still in our shorts, and swimming was for after lunch, if at all. My brother gave a quick, almost dismissive nod and a wave of his hand, indicating he'd heard and understood. At least that's what I assumed. I had no reason to doubt him. There was no sudden jolt of fear that day. The only feeling was one of fleeting contentment, a rare absence of the usual dread. The atmosphere felt genuinely pleasant, almost deceptively so. There was no unusual unease, no strange coincidence that screamed danger ahead. Just the innocent allure of a stream on a beautiful day, and my brother's playful insistence.
We walked towards the stream, the sound of the babbling water growing louder with each step. The sun filtered through the canopy, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. It was serene, peaceful. As we reached the edge, the water looked shallow, clear, and inviting. My brother, with a mischievous grin, dared me to step closer to see if we could spot any fish. I hesitated for a moment, remembering my father's words, but the allure of a shared adventure, something rare with my brother, won me over. Then, everything changed in a terrifying blur. It was a rapid, disorienting descent into chaos. One moment, I was standing on the bank, peering into the clear water, and the next, I was losing my footing. It wasn't a slip, it felt more deliberate, as if I was being pulled. My brother, for reasons I still can't fully grasp, held my head under the water. The beautiful, clear stream became a dark, terrifying prison. My lungs burned, demanding air, but all I could taste was cold, murky water. The initial surprise morphed into panic, a primal fear as my body fought desperately for breath. My arms flailed, my legs kicked, but his grip was surprisingly strong for a child. The world around me, the redwoods, the picnic, my parents' voices, it all receded, replaced by the roaring in my ears and the suffocating pressure in my chest. Each second stretched into an eternity, a silent, agonizing struggle. The light above the water's surface began to dim, flickering like a dying candle, and a strange, profound calm began to settle over me. Not of peace, but of an awful, inevitable surrender. The tension wasn't just physical, it was the unbearable weight of life slipping away, a silent scream that no one could hear.
The water filled my lungs, a burning, suffocating agony. Yet as my body went limp, a profound stillness enveloped me. I was no longer struggling, no longer in pain, but floating, observing my own lifeless form from just above the surface, a silent witness to my own demise. The moment I truly died was not a sudden violent jolt, but a gradual, almost gentle fading of the physical. 1 second, my lungs were screaming for air, a desperate primal urge to breathe, and the next, a strange, serene quietude began to settle over me. My brother's grip, which had felt like an iron vice, seemed to loosen, not physically, but as if its impact on me diminished. The thrashing of my limbs ceased. I felt a profound sense of detachment, a quiet surrender. The pain in my chest, the burning in my lungs, it all receded, becoming a distant echo, like a memory of a bad dream. Then I was no longer in my body. I was above it. Just a few feet above the murky water, I saw my small 5-year-old self suspended lifelessly beneath the surface. My brother, his face a mask of shifting emotions from anger to a dawning fear, were still holding my body down. It was a horrifying sight, yet I felt no horror, only a detached curiosity. My physical form, once a source of constant discomfort and pain, was now merely an object, a vessel I had clearly abandoned. I watched as his grip finally released, and my limp body began to drift further down the stream, snagging on a submerged branch. The thought that he wanted the evidence of his involvement to disappear, to deny any knowledge of my disappearance, was clear to me, even in this altered state. As I disconnected completely, a new reality unfolded. The world I had known, the familiar sounds of the picnic, the towering redwoods, my parents' distant voices, all faded into an indistinct hum. I was no longer aware of their presence, or even the memory of entering the water. All that remained was a profound sense of peace, an incredible lightness that defied any earthly sensation. I was floating, not just above the water, but seemingly above all physical constraints. It was an exhilarating freedom, a sense of boundless movement, an absolute calm that was utterly alien to my earthly existence. The constant anxieties, the fear of my father, the bewilderment of my brother's cruelty, all vanished. There was only an overwhelming feeling of belonging, of being truly home, embraced by something far greater than myself.
My perception sharpened, becoming incredibly vivid, beyond anything I had ever experienced. My thoughts, once a jumbled mess of childhood fears and questions, now raced with incredible speed, yet with perfect clarity. Time itself seemed to cease, or perhaps everything was happening at once, in an eternal present. I had no sense of urgency, no awareness of minutes or hours, only the unfolding of an infinite moment. My vision expanded, not just physically, but as an inner sight, allowing me to perceive far more than my earthly eyes ever could, and my hearing, It wasn't external sounds, but a profound internal resonance, as if all communication occurred within my very being, a mind meld with the universe itself. Suddenly, I was in a vast, veiled chamber, standing before an entity of immense power and benevolence. This was no ordinary being. It was awesome, impressive, and imposing, radiating a majestic presence that filled the space. The entity sat upon an ornate throne of gold and ivory, robed in brilliant white with a golden belt. Its hands and feet were bronze, but its face was entirely obscured by a shimmering cloud of pearl-white energy, an aura that extended 18 inches above what would be its head, sparkling with translucent, multicolored rainbows. There was no noise, only varying vibrations, a constant flashing and sparking of faint color shifts emanating from its form. I sensed its voice, not as spoken words, but a direct, firm, and clear communication within my mind, like my own thoughts, yet infinitely profound. This was, I understood, the Trinity, presenting themselves as one unified being, the Elohim. In this sacred space, I began to comprehend truths that transcended my earthly understanding. I was shown a holographic presentation, a panoramic review of not just my current life, but 3 contiguous lifetimes. It was an atypical review, bypassing the common experiences of tunnels of light, intense feelings of peace and love, or encounters with pets, family members, or guiding angels. This was a direct, unfiltered download of information. I witnessed my first life as a judge, though the details of my early years were vague. I was adopted by a lawyer who became a judge, and I followed in his footsteps. That life ended abruptly, shot with an arrow after a judgment, bleeding out by a creek. Then I saw my second attempt at life, in my mother's womb, which tragically ended during the birth process. And finally, my third successful birth, becoming this woman's child again, born on December 23, 1949. The recent events leading to my drowning, including the car ride to the redwood forest, were replayed in vivid detail, allowing me to understand the intricate web of cause and effect.
Beyond my personal lives, I was shown scenes from the world's future, and most profoundly, how creation itself began. I was drawn into the beginning of the beginning before the beginning began. It was a realm of pure nothingness, an empty void, utter darkness. Yet within it, I was aware of an unseen presence, emanating a vibration of pure curiosity. From this limitless nothingness, the source of all things, the Trinity was created, one being at a time. I understood that the purpose of creation, at its various levels, was to gain real-time experiences, rather than remaining in theoretical algorithms. I learned that there is indeed life after death, and reincarnation serves as a means to resolve unresolved issues and learn new lessons. I saw what appeared to be classrooms or training centers, where souls were shown alternative choices they could have made, and the unfortunate consequences of their actual decisions. Returning to a new life seemed to be an option, not for all souls, but for selected ones, who could even review their potential parents and future experiences. Some were allowed to recall parts of their training or prior lives, especially in their early years, before the age of 6. The entity revealed the purpose of mankind. We were created differently from other beings in heaven, intended as companions for both the Trinity and the source of creation. We were given free will, a gift apparently without the restrictions placed on other parts of creation. However, I was shown how a specific angel or group of angels was assigned to test Adam and Eve. The transgression wasn't merely eating the fruit. It was Adam's act of hiding from God and then lying multiple times, which shattered the intended bond.
This misuse of free will, I understood, was allowed to spiral, leading to the disparity between man, God, and earth. All of this, I was shown, would eventually reach a point where there was nothing left to learn, and the process would reset, allowing for deeper bonds of companionship. The feeling of love, as I had known it on earth, seemed inadequate to describe the profound embrace I experienced. It was a sense of belonging, of being utterly at peace, devoid of concerns or fears. I felt truly home, enveloped in unconditional acceptance that transcended any human emotion. I understood that my purpose was connected to this grand design, to guide my family through future events, to resolve the apparent curse that my mother believed she carried as a reincarnation of Eve, falsely accused. I was meant to be the firstborn girl, but my birth as a boy was perceived as a betrayal, her last chance to break the cycle. I was to resolve her guilt and remorse, especially if she was not at fault. I accepted that I would be guided to fulfill this purpose, even if the path was unclear. My soul, in this heightened state, was filled with a sense of purpose, a commitment to refuse to return to my difficult earthly life without fully understanding the reason and benefit of doing so. I knew with absolute certainty that this was not my first encounter with these dysfunctional people, and I promised myself that I would be more prepared if I ever needed to reconnect with any of this in another life. The profound insights into reality, the universe, and my own place within it were overwhelming, yet perfectly clear, solidifying my understanding of God's character and the purpose of creation.
Just as the profound revelations deepened and the timeless unity enveloped me, there was a sudden, jarring shift. The serene void ripped open, and I was violently thrust back into a world of crushing physical pain, the bitter taste of stream water, and the chilling realization of an unfinished destiny. The return was not a gentle transition. It was an abrupt, violent expulsion from a state of pure being back into the confines of a suffering body. One moment I was bathed in the infinite wisdom and unconditional love of the Source, engaged in conversations that peeled back the layers of reality. And the next, I felt an almost physical rip through the fabric of existence. It was as if a powerful, unseen hand had snatched me from the blissful void and slammed me back into dense, suffocating matter. The first sensation was an overwhelming, excruciating pain that engulfed every fiber of my being. My lungs burned with an intensity far beyond anything I had ever known, a raw, ragged tearing as they desperately tried to pull in air, only to be met with the choking bitterness of water. My head throbbed, my limbs felt heavy, and a profound nausea churned in my stomach. The lightness, the freedom, the boundless calm of the other side were replaced by a crushing weight, a profound disorientation. It was a shock, not just to my system, but to my very soul. The contrast was stark, brutal. From infinite knowledge and peace, I was plummeted back into a frail, wounded, gasping physical form. My body reacted violently. I coughed, long and agonizingly, expelling water that seemed to have been lodged deep within my lungs. My muscles ached, stiff and uncooperative. I felt weak, utterly drained, as if every ounce of energy had been siphoned from me. My head lolled, and my vision blurred, the vividness of the other realm replaced by the dull, fuzzy edges of the real world. My small body shivered uncontrollably, not just from the cold of the water, but from the shock of the transition. I remember the exhaustion, the utter fatigue that settled deep in my bones.
My mother's frantic voice was the first sound to pierce through the fog of my pain. I was told that when they found me, I was blue, not breathing, and essentially lifeless. My mother, in a desperate attempt, began beating me, though I knew it was her desperate attempt to revive me.
She pulled me from the water, laying me on the ground. I remember her, kneeling over me, her face contorted with terror and grief. She was hysterical, screaming, "Don't you die! Don't you die on me!" Her desperation was palpable, a stark contrast to the quiet detachment I had felt while observing my body from above. My father, I was told, remained strangely silent, his face unreadable. He did not participate in my rescue, nor did he offer comfort. It was a cold, distant presence, even in that moment of crisis. My mother's reaction was one of immense relief, laced with continued fear. She squeezed me tightly, repeating, thank God," over and over. But there was also a profound sense of disbelief and a hint of anger when I tried to speak about what had happened. I tried, weakly, to tell her about the man in the white robe and the beautiful light, but her eyes just widened with a mixture of confusion and what looked like horror. She immediately dismissed it, shushing me, saying I was just delirious or had dreamed it. She probably thought I was having a seizure or was simply imagining things due to the trauma. There was no understanding, no acceptance of what I was trying to convey. My father's reaction was even more dismissive. He ordered me to stop telling those lies, his voice cold and sharp. Their disbelief was a second shock, almost as jarring as the physical return itself. How could something so real, so profound, be so utterly dismissed? I quickly learned that sharing my experience was not an option. Their reactions, particularly my father's stern command, taught me to internalize everything. I was just a child, and their adult reality was clearly unable to accommodate what I had seen and felt. So I retreated within myself, holding on to the memories, the knowledge, and the profound peace of the other side, knowing that this extraordinary journey was mine alone to bear and integrate. The silence around my experience began almost immediately, enforced by the fear and disbelief of those closest to me.
From that day forward, the world I inhabited was no longer the same. My very essence had been profoundly altered. The mundane worries that once consumed me evaporated, replaced by an unshakable inner peace and an urgent, divinely imparted purpose to unravel the complexities of our existence and share what I had learned. The transformation that began on that Father's Day was not a gradual shift. It was a seismic upheaval that reshaped the very foundations of my being. Everything that I once thought mattered, the approval of my parents, the sting of my brother's cruelty, the pursuit of fleeting childhood joys, all faded into insignificance. My priorities were utterly inverted. The material world with its demands and distractions felt distant, almost unreal. What I gained was an unshakable sense of peace, a profound inner calm that no external turmoil could truly disturb, and a direct, irrefutable knowledge of a reality far grander than any human construct. I ceased to value superficial appearances or external validation. My true worth, I now understood, lay in my spiritual essence and the divine connection I had experienced. My entire worldview was irrevocably altered. The hell, fire, and brimstone Christianity of my parents, which had always felt contradictory and unsatisfying, crumbled entirely. The NDE revealed to me a God not of vengeance and condemnation, but of unconditional love, infinite wisdom, and boundless understanding. I learned that what we perceive as God is in essence the source of creation, a benevolent curiosity that desired to share its internal thoughts, and manifested as the Trinity, the Elohim. This was not a distant judgmental deity, but an all-encompassing presence that permeates everything, seen and unseen. Death, I now knew with absolute certainty, was not an end, but a transition, a return to a more fundamental state of being. The concept of reincarnation, once a distant notion, became a clear and logical progression of the soul's journey, a necessary cycle for growth, for resolving karmic issues, and for continuous learning. My own multi-lifetime review provided concrete evidence of this, showing me how souls choose their experiences and how past actions ripple through subsequent lives. The idea of spiritual contracts and the ability of souls to review potential parents and life experiences before birth resonated deeply with my understanding of purpose and free will.
My beliefs about the meaning of existence shifted from a vague search for purpose to a profound understanding of humanity's role as companions to the divine, created to gain real-time experiences. The fall from grace, as depicted in the Garden of Eden, was revealed not as a simple act of disobedience, but a complex series of choices involving concealment and deceit, shattering an intended covenant. This deeper insight into human nature, our capacity for both divinity and deviation, became a cornerstone of my new philosophy. From that day on, I carried a profound sense of purpose. While there was no clear, explicit mission statement delivered to me in words, the entire experience instilled an undeniable drive to understand and integrate these truths. My primary mission, as I understood it, was to resolve the apparent curse my mother felt, to alleviate her guilt and remorse regarding my birth. I understood that I was to guide her, and by extension my family, through future events, helping them to see the truth of their own spiritual journeys. This wasn't about converting them to a new religion, but about gently nudging them towards an understanding of unconditional love, acceptance, and the true nature of reality. This mission manifested in a quiet, internal dedication to self-discovery and a quest for deeper knowledge. I devoured books, not just on spirituality and NDEs, but on philosophy, physics, and psychology, searching for connections between the earthly and the otherworldly. My keen perception, honed during my out-of-body experiences, allowed me to see patterns and insights that others often missed. I became a quiet observer, always seeking to understand the underlying truths behind human behavior and the grand design of the universe. Though I didn't become a public speaker or a professional helper in the traditional sense, I found ways to share my insights through quiet conversations, always trying to convey the profound peace and boundless love I had encountered. Integrating such a monumental experience into everyday life was not without its challenges. The most immediate difficulty was the utter isolation. My family's dismissal of my story, their insistence that I was lying or delirious, created a profound chasm between us. It taught me to guard my inner world, to live with a secret that shaped every aspect of my existence. I often felt like an alien, walking among people who couldn't possibly comprehend the truths I held. This loneliness was compounded by the fact that the spiritual concepts I had grasped were so far removed from the prevailing societal norms and religious doctrines. It took years, decades even, to fully process and integrate the knowledge, to find a way to live authentically with such a profound revelation while navigating a world that often seemed oblivious to its own deeper reality. There was a constant internal struggle to reconcile the infinite beauty of the other side with the often messy, painful realities of human interaction.
But despite the difficulties, the NDE gave me an invaluable gift, an unwavering inner compass. It provided clarity, strength, and a profound sense of peace that transcended any earthly fear. My life, though it continued to have its share of struggles, was fundamentally anchored in an understanding that there was more, much more to existence than what met the eye. To those watching, I want to say this. My story is not just about a brush with death. It's about life, about understanding the profound truth of who we are beyond our physical forms.
It's about recognizing that love, true unconditional love, is the fundamental fabric of the universe. We are all interconnected, each a vital thread in the grand tapestry of creation. Don't wait for a near-death experience to awaken to these truths. Look within, seek understanding, and know that you are infinitely loved, infinitely connected, and that your life, with all its challenges and triumphs, holds a deeper meaning, a sacred contract, and an opportunity for growth that echoes through eternity. Seek your own truth, for it is within you, always.